Hello, and in this video we're going to go ahead and talk about sample space. So let's get started by looking at some definitions. So when we're talking about probability and counting and outcomes and all this sort of thing, it starts with talking about an experiment that you're doing. So an experiment is any procedure that can be repeated and has a set of outcomes. So this could be anything from, let's say, playing any game you have. So I love Monopoly, so it could be rolling those dice. That's an experiment because each time has a different outcome, right? Sometimes may have similar outcomes, but we have a set of controlled outcomes that are possible. Drawing cards, so if you're a big card player, anytime you're playing cards, that's an experiment because you're not sure what the outcome is going to be. Or you could think broadly here, driving a car. Every time you do that, you do have some probability of getting into a car accident. That's kind of a disturbing thought, but any of those have outcomes, right? You get safely to your place or you don't. So thinking about different things as we move forward on what activities, even in your daily life, like cooking, turns out great, doesn't turn out great. You know, what are the outcomes possible? So an event is a specific set of outcomes of an experiment. So let's look at like rolling dice. You're playing Monopoly, right? Okay, maybe we want to get doubles to get out of jail. That would be an event because it's a subset of the bigger experiment. Another one is rolling just a six-sided die, 1. And you could have anything from 1 all the way up to 6, right? So maybe an event would be rolling an even or an odd or just rolling a 5. So think of all the different outcomes that are possible. So that leads us straight into the sample space, which is just basically a list of all possible outcomes for an event. And sample spaces are written in set notation. So what does set notation mean? What it means is you're going to have 2 braces. These are called braces. Okay, little squiggly lines. And what you're going to do is you're going to write your outcomes inside those braces with commas separating them. And you write out all the different outcomes. There could be just 2, there could be 1, there could be none. Just list them all out. So we're going to run through a couple examples just to get you a little bit more familiar with what the outcomes could be. So let's look at some basic experiments here. So these are all experiments. The first one is tossing a coin. So just think of like a penny or a nickel or whatever. What are the outcomes of tossing that coin? What are the possible outcomes? Well, they would be either getting a head or a tail. And I'm just going to use H for head, T for tail. They're just abbreviations, so I don't have to write it all out because we're trying to save time here, right? And then since it's the sample space, we're going to go ahead and just throw it into braces to indicate that those 2 are part of those outcomes. Those outcomes are part of the event or the experiment. Now, the next one is rolling a 6-sided die. So imagine you got a die, you're going to roll it. What are the possible outcomes? Well, for a 6-sided die, we're going to start with our braces and we're just going to list the possible outcomes, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it, right? There's no other outcomes possible. So we can't get a 7. There's no 7 on that 6-sided die. There's no 0. There's nothing else we can get. Those are all the possible outcomes. How about something else? Let's say you're listing off a day of the week. What could you possibly list? Well, start with those braces to indicate that it's a set and just list the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, and we should probably capitalize those, but you know, we're going to actually just abbreviate it because this is going to take too long. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, usually the favorite days of the week. So this would be your set of possible outcomes for listing a day of the week. That's all it is. You're just listing the possibilities. Now make sure you list all of the possibilities to be a sample space. So didn't mean to erase that. So just make sure you have all possible outcomes, no matter how likely. Okay. Now let's do one that's a little bit more difficult. It says, what is the sample space of the event? So here we're looking at an event that you randomly guess the answers to a 3-question true or false quiz. So first you have to understand what is this event, or we could even call this an experiment. You're just guessing on a quiz. So maybe you're just totally, I don't know any of the answers, I'm just guessing here. You have 3 questions, and each question is either true or false. So question 1, you have either T or F, right? Question 2, same thing. Question 3, true or false, true or false. So that's the possible, those are my options, right? But we need to list out our sample space. So we need to come up with those braces, and we need to list all possible samples. So when I'm looking at this, what's one possibility? So let's list out one possibility. Okay, I'm randomly guessing. So what could I put for number 1? I could put true, right? What could I put for number 2? I could put true again. How about for number 3? Let's say I guess all trues. Okay, I'm winging it here. That would be one possible outcome. So we would list it true, 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 because that's one possible outcome. What's another one? Just list them out. Okay, 3 questions. What are the options? So here, maybe one of them lists true here, but then we want to flip and make the 3rd question false. This would be a different outcome, okay, because it's different, right? It's not exactly the same. And we could actually change where that false is located, and that would change the outcome as well. So we could make it true, false, true. There's still one false, but we're just going to move him around. False, true, true. So what you see is I've come up with 4 outcomes so far. They're all 3-question quiz, right? And they're either true or false. So I'm just giving the possible outcomes, the possible guesses you could make. Now, okay, we have all true, 1 false, and then we've arranged them among them. Okay, what's another possibility? We could have, maybe we're going to have false first. Well, we already have 1 where there's false first and the other 2 are true. So what if we did 2 falses and 1 true? Is that the same as any of these? No. Okay, it's different, right? So it's a different outcome, so I'll go ahead and write that next. And then again, we're just going to move these around to see the other outcomes. So I can move that true to the middle, or I can move that true to the first. So false, true, false. And then, can I squeeze it in here? False, oh, I'm sorry, true, false, false. Okay, so we do have, let's see, where we have 2 true, 1 false, 1 false, 2 true, which is the same, 2 false, 1 true. What are we missing? We have 1 more. Can you think of what we're possibly missing? How about they're all false? Let's make them all false. So if we look here, how many total outcomes are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 outcomes of just randomly guessing on a 3-question true or false quiz. So the best thing to do when you're trying to come up with the sample space is think about the different outcomes. Okay, so play around with it, draw an example, write out some examples. What are the possible outcomes? So do that for your homework and it will help a lot to draw out what is happening here. What am I looking for? Okay. Now, when we're talking about sample spaces, it's great to be able to write out the sample spaces to see the possible outcomes, but sometimes there's just too many outcomes in our problem. So we need a different way to deal with how do we figure out how many outcomes there are. So for example, if you were playing Scrabble and you were trying to arrange 7 letters, just switching tiles between each other. Keep in mind, every time you switch one tile, it's a completely new arrangement. So this is going to be a ton of outcomes, okay? Way too many to count. So I'm not going to force you to write those all out. You're welcome. There are far too many. So we're just not going to do that. Instead, we're going to concentrate on some counting techniques, which is what's up next. So continue on, keep watching, and let me know if you have any other questions.